Time for another special edition of Litter Media Live. I'm Dan Ramey, and in studio with us is Mr. Mike Throne. He is the president and CEO of the Ross-Chillicothe Chamber of Commerce.
Still the president.
It's good to be able to say that with a job any day, right?
That's right.
We want to talk about BOI. If you don't know what we're talking about, we'll find out here in just a moment. But first, these words from our friends at Hometown Motors Incorporated.
As a professional race car driver, I live for speed, power, and performance, on and off the track. That's why I use the Dixie Chopper, the world's fastest lawnmower. Race into your local dealership today and test drive a new Dixie Chopper.
Somebody that sometimes comes to Ross County.
That's right.
Going down to the racetrack. Dan Ramey, Michael Throne with us today. BOI, we jumped into this. This is something that I think captured a lot of people by surprise this year. If you have an LLC, we don't know that it's all LLCs, but if you've got a business, you want to know a little bit more about this.
Yeah, and so we've been talking about it for quite a while, but of course, you know, as you get closer to a deadline for something, obviously people's attention span gets a little greater, and it ramps up the intensity, right? And so
they're like, "What's this?"
Yeah, how did I not know about this? Which I get that. You know, there's a lot of things to deal with in a day. So the BOI is Business Ownership Information, and it was part of the Corporate Transparency Act that was passed a few years back. And essentially what it intends to do is to cut down on the laundering of money through companies. I would imagine illegal money through reputable companies. And so what they wanted to do, and what I think Congress intended to do, was to make sure that things were on the up and up with all businesses. And so they created this Corporate Transparency Act, which has a lot of different provisions in it, but the BOI report was scheduled to be filed by the end of this year, and it basically just asks businesses to state who their owners are, so that way there's no undeclared owners or things like that. Now, of course, there's going to be penalties for that if there were undeclared owners, and so that was kind of the part of the bill that I think people were a little uncomfortable with. And not to mention the fact of just having to file this information by the end of the year or face significant fines, up to, I think, $10,000 a day if you didn't have it filed. So, you know, but fortunately, there's a court in Texas that a couple weeks ago ruled, gave the law, that part of the law, a stay to then take another look at whether or not this was beyond the Labor Department's scale of work. And so it's been set to the side, so no one has to file by the 31st of December. But what we've advised our members on is to just make sure that you follow the news, and we'll be there, of course, as well to kind of be a stopgap, but follow the news, see if there's another ruling on this, and then from there, you may not have to do it in the future, but if the court would come out and kind of reverse itself and say, you know, we think people do need to file this, then you'll probably need a quick timeline to get it filed.
And always there's in the back of a business owner's mind, it's like, once again, I'm being fleeced by the government for something. In the original plan, there was a fee involved, right? Yeah,
I think the way that I remember it when it was first proposed, there was going to be a fee to offset the cost to process these reports and analyze them and things like that. But fortunately, that was taken out. In fact, this is where we came in at the beginning of this thing, is when this law was first proposed, we signed on to a U.S. Chamber letter that basically opposed it completely for that provision, and also for the provision of, you know, the government already has a lot of information on our businesses and already knows a lot about our businesses. And if you went through COVID and had to get money for your business because of that, all the things that they asked you to do. And so we don't need another layer on that takes time, effort, and away from running our businesses. And so we initially proposed that all these things be taken out of the law. We were able to get the fees taken out, but the rest of it passed. And, so we knew that the law was coming, but it was going to be phased in over time. And now we're up to the BOI part of it, and people are in a little bit of they're mad about it. I've gotten a lot of that feedback, but they're also concerned about what the government's going to do with all this information.
Yeah. Is there a link on your website where people can go to find out more?
Yeah, we actually work with the U.S. Chamber on this. So I would go to the U.S. Chamber's website. You'll find business ownership information right there. We put it out in our newsletters. We pretty much refer back to the U.S. Chamber site.
Okay, very good. While we have you here, we wanted to touch on some other items as well. What's hot right now in chamber news?
The end of the year is always a little bit slower time. Thank God for that. We just got done with our last big event of the year. One of the, obviously the change in leadership at not only at the federal level with the presidency, and then of course we'll have a new senator next year in Ohio. But even at the local level, at the state house, we've got new leaders in the House and Senate. A lot of that is, of course, Matt Huffman is moving from the Senate back to the House. So we know Matt Huffman, and we know what his stances are on a lot of the business related issues. But I think the other part of it is just like what will be the priorities for this new legislature moving forward. And so we have a lot of conversations with our state rep, Mark Johnson, also our state Senator Shane Wilkin, and even Bob Peterson, who doesn't necessarily represent all of Ross County anymore, but Bob's a great friend of the chamber. And so we have a lot of conversations about what that's going to look like. Child care is a huge issue. There are at least 3 bills that our chamber, in connection with the U.S. Chamber and some of our other colleagues, are really pushing hard for. One of them is Mark Johnson's tri-share bill, which would split the cost 3 ways between the employer, the state, and the employee to try to minimize that cost. We're also following a couple of bills that would increase capacity for child care because, if you consider the fact that there are as many child care facilities in and around Columbus as there are in all of southeastern Ohio, you realize that there's a huge gap in the ability for folks to find adequate child care in southeast Ohio. So we want to try to change that game, and so we think these bills are going to help, and so we're hopeful that they're going to be discussed in the lame duck session, and I hope they're going to get done. It's hard to say whether they will or not. There's a lot of things moving through and moving quickly through the legislature right now, but that is definitely one of our bigger issues.
Well, anything involving families,
Yep.
that should have a pretty good sized priority stacker on it.
Yeah, and then on the local level, we're of course following the Bridge Street project for next year, which will really start, and really what's going to happen with the World Heritage Visitor Center in downtown Chillicothe as well. So those 2 big things. I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do with the Bridge Street project is just over-communicate to people about what they can expect. It's been really good to see that ODOT has responded to having the project at least slow down or shut down during the holiday seasons, because it's going to be a 2-year project. So I think those things are kind of fun that they've been able to work through that. But of course, there's going to be some traffic slowdowns and stoppages and things like that.
Stuff you won't be able to avoid.
Yep. But the end product is going to be, that's the thing. You got to keep your eye on the prize with this thing.
Right. And we look so much at downtown because that's a lot of local people. Mm-hmm. And I always hear there's never anything to do in Chillicothe, or it's always owned by a big company somewhere. What's crazy is if you think about it, you go up and down Bridge Street, so many of those businesses are employing local people.
Yep.
And they are locals who live here and are operating it. It may have a big chain name, but it's still creating dollars here.
Yeah. I was just talking to somebody that serves as a server at a Bridge Street restaurant, but then also tends bar at a downtown restaurant. And they said, I have to work 2 jobs just because of what I have to do to afford for my family because of inflation and other things like that. But the other thing that they were saying, and I think it's really impressive, is that they love the dichotomy. They'll see a lot of people from outside the community on Bridge Street and then see a lot of local people downtown. And, it crosses both ways, but they love it and they enjoy it. And, they're hopeful that they don't have to work 2 jobs at some point in time, right. But at the same time, they're pretty excited about, what they're making now and how they're able to serve people.
Mm-hmm. This money that was dispersed amongst our communities here this past May. This has a date on it. It needs to be all taken care of by the end of 2026, if I remember correctly.
That is correct, yeah.
So we're going to see not only changes in Yoctangi Park, but also downtown here in Chillicothe local. But that same thing is going to be happening in Bainbridge. It's going to be happening in Clarksburg. So we have to have some patience over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I will say that what's going to happen in Frankfort and Bainbridge, to me, is the most exciting part of it, and here's why. I love the fact I love it when Chillicothe gets money to do new things, right? I mean, everybody does. And everybody recognizes that Chillicothe is the center of Ross County. But when we're able to see things go to upgrade Bainbridge and give them a new park, and to do the same in Frankfort, and to create new things and new experiences, as we bring folks in to our community for World Heritage or whatever it is, Tecumseh, the paints, whatever those things look like, the really exciting thing to me is we can give them someplace else to go to get an even smaller town feel. That, maybe a lot of folks, especially those traveling from abroad, they probably enjoy those types of things. And so giving, somebody the ability to go out to Frankfort and see the way that they're growing and thriving, and Bainbridge is the same way, it's going to be neat to see that evolve over the next couple of years for sure.
You mentioned something to me earlier this year. You had traveled abroad, and you were in a World Heritage City.
Yeah.
And you started asking questions, and one of the things that impressed me most was the server that you were talking to at that time says, "We're planning on coming."
Yeah. Yeah. If you know anything about Europeans, especially folks from Germany and France, they love touring World Heritage sites, and they want to go to the American sites that are the newest ones. And so this person was mentioning to me that they had gone a couple of years ago to the one over by St. Louis, Cohica, and they said, "Oh, Chillicothe, you were one of the ones that got this World Heritage site." And I was like, "Is this a plant? Like, did somebody try to mess with me?" And it's really interesting to hear people talk about it, because they have no concept of Native Americans and American Indian culture. And so what they want to learn more, they're intrigued by it because they know the American tradition is very steeped in that culture. And so, they may have some skewed ideas about it, and they may have some stuff that comes from Hollywood, but they want to learn more. And so I think we're going to see more of that. If you talk to Melody Young at the Visitors Bureau, their visitors from outside the United States to their website are way, way up. And I think we're going to see more of that over the next 4 or 5 years for sure.
I know in some of our conversations with Melody, explaining the successes of the mound out in Illinois, how it went from 50,000 visitors a year to more than 250,000 a year. Trying to put your head around that here in Chillicothe. Will it happen? I'm going to say yes, it's going to happen, because who thought the World Heritage inscription would ever come?
Right. Well, when we started this process, 15 years ago, I think it was just sort of a pipe dream. And then the closer that we got to it, I remember when they finally created the proposal to go to the UNESCO, that felt like the end.
Yeah.
But it was really just the beginning, because then you have to get it approved. And then once you get it approved, then you got to do something with it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's been the cool thing to see over the last year or so, is just all the conversations that we're having to try to not only invite these folks here, but then give them something to do when they're here. And, I've said from the beginning that Chillicothe is the epicenter, literally, of this World Heritage designation, but we want to make sure that the experience is the epicenter as well. And so to me, that's the really cool part, is seeing all these things now the money come to build the things that will create the experience that will bring people coming in and spreading the word to other people throughout the United States, throughout Europe. Go and see this new World Heritage site, because it's an experience you don't want to miss.
How quickly this stuff moves as well. We went 15, 20 years waiting for the opportunity. They get the call to make the presentation, And I don't know if you were awake watching it like I was that morning, and you watched all the issues they had with the applicant before, and then suddenly they get to Chillicothe, make a presentation. Anybody? Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, a lot of build up, and then boom.
What a tribute, though, to I think the folks that worked on it.
Yeah.
And they possess an expertise at these things that I don't have. The only thing I got out of the 15 years was 15 years older. But I think that what we got out of this was just a new appreciation for the history of our area, and especially with the Native American presence. And then I think we've reconnected with a lot of the folks that were part of that process, especially the tribe, the Shawnee tribe, and things like that have helped us with every step of the way, been part of this process. They've done such a great job. And so I was sort of like, oh, that was a little anticlimactic, but I'll take it for sure.
That's right. No argument from me. However, as we talk about how quickly that got approved, now things have really started to step up. And so now, hold on, folks, get ready.
Yep,
and
for sure.
If you haven't done this yet, you still have an opportunity to go through the Ross-Chillicothe Convention and Visitors Bureau and become
I should have worn my badge.
Yeah, educated. Yeah. My badge is in a camera bag that I carry around with me. But you can become a certified Ask Me About World Heritage person.
That's right. Yep.
And we're all ambassadors now.
Yep.
From this point on.
Yeah, the crazy thing is that most people will probably think, well, what business do I have to be an ambassador? Really, it's just about guiding people in the right directions. We're gonna have a lot of folks that come to this community that are unfamiliar with us and in our area, but then also maybe don't speak the language, right? And so if that's the case, then we're going to need to have different ways to communicate, whether that's through a map just to kind of circle it and give them the way to go, or to, if you know a foreign language, that would be super helpful as well, right? So
I'm brushing up on my Dutch just to see if we can.
Well, so here's a great way that I didn't even think about this. We actually got a new copier last year at the chamber, and they literally have things that can scan a document, convert it to English or vice versa, and allow you to communicate with people that you don't speak their language, or you maybe have a very cursory understanding of what they're saying. We didn't get that feature because it was a lot more money, but to me, it's highly worth it if you're in the travel and tourism business to do that. And I think, that's one of those things that you don't know you need it until you actually need it.
Which is why you put a translator app on your phone.
That's right.
To have that ready to go. It may not be exact what you want,
yep.
but hopefully that person speaking another language will be able to convey what you mean.
Yeah. And then just getting them to the right places, right? Yeah. I mean, that, especially with us, with our county being so large landmass wise, and really having, a lot of different mounds in different places.
Yeah.
It's going to be really important for us to make sure we get them there and get them there safely.
Would you say that's the top thing, the monies that were gifted to Ross County from the state government? Would that be one of the top stories of the year? Oh,
absolutely. I think, we ended last year on the high note of getting the World Heritage designation, but then it was sort of like, well, what are we going to do to create this experience that we know people are going to be expecting when they get here? And I'll be honest, I think when we got the designation, I didn't know where that was going to come from. Yeah. And so thank goodness that, the DeWine and Houston administration really saw that as a need, particularly in southeastern Ohio and really across the state, because a lot of this money went across the state, but particularly in southeastern Ohio, where we could really, give our villages and our attractions a nice influx of cash to keep them current and keep them as a viable option for folks to go to and see.
Because otherwise it would be either tax dollars or it would be corporate sponsorship in some fashion.
And I mean, you can only go to the same corporate sponsors so many times, right?
The well's only so deep.
Yeah. And I think, no one wants to put local tax levies on, for sure. I mean, it's hard. But at the same time, we're hopeful that this money will be shown to be a good use of our investment. And then from there, who knows, maybe the community wants to support other things that, will help as well. We're lucky in Chillicothe that we have a great transit system here that's funded by taxpayer dollars that was passed decades ago. But we do know that there's some needs in the county that we need to address. And so, maybe that's a way we could go down the road.
I know with the change of the presidential administration, that all will take place in January. What's the feeling from the Chamber's office on what's ahead over these next 4 years?
Yeah, I think from the Ohio and the U.S. Chamber, there's a lot of optimism that there's going to be some addressing of some pro-business policies that haven't been advanced. Again, I think our needs in Ross County are a little different than they are from Columbus and Dayton and so on and so forth. What we're trying to do is we're trying to build infrastructure to help fuel future development. So there's a few bills that will be going through the Ohio House next year. There's a revival of what was called the Energize Ohio bill, which was offering some incentives to natural gas companies to help fund the infrastructure to help development. We're hopeful that one will be worked on and get through the legislature next year to help us with the next phase of development for Ross County. From the U.S. Chamber side, one of the bigger concerns that there are right now is trade. The tariffs, the incoming president has said that he wants to institute tariffs. There's concern about how that will affect inflation. And so we're going to have to navigate those waters early on if that's what he intends to do. And so, just like anything else, what you campaign on never is 100% of what you actually govern as. But at the same time, if it is, then we're going to have to figure some things out. So
we tread through those waters every 4 years.
Every 4 years, and sometimes every 2 years because of congressional cycles as well. So we've been doing this for over 200 years, right? Like we should be able to work our way through it.
Yeah. The Chamber as a whole, you gained members this year? Yeah,
we're up to almost 780 members now. In fact, I think we're going to probably be over 780 by the end of the year. We did some new things this year with our due structure. Instead of just asking you to pay a number and then we really have to kind of work to earn your trust in terms of whether or not we delivered value. We now have tiered structure that says here, if you buy it at this amount, here's what you'll get. And then, it allows folks to have the power of choice. It gives them the ability to say, I want to engage at a high level, so I'll be up here so I can get all these other things. Or I just want to be a member and I want to be known as being part of it, or whatever, everything in between, right? So to us, that was the biggest change that we made over this year. But we're getting great feedback from our members right now. Folks, investing at higher levels than we thought they were going to. And so now the charge on us is to deliver the value in 2025 that keeps them coming back or even considering higher for the future. And the other thing I think we're going to be really focused on in 2025 is developing leaders. I've started a Lunch and Lead series that will be a monthly series starting in January. I'm doing it all by myself, and I'm kind of excited about it because it's something that I've always kind of wanted to do. We'll just come in. We'll do a little quick icebreaker just to kind of get everybody familiar with each other, and then I'll do a little instruction for about 25 minutes, and then we'll have conversations about leadership. The idea is to try to lift up new leaders in our community and prepare them for service, whether that would be on city council or school boards or county commissions or even on nonprofit boards.
Kind of like the old Pathways or Pathfinders.
So we still have our big program, which is much more like what Pathfinders was. Okay. This is something that I've kind of just done on my own. I called it Lunch and Lead, just to kind of, we're going to do it over the lunch hour.
Because there's always food involved.
That's right. And you have to bring your own, but I'm more than willing to take on a sponsor. But the idea is that I've had so many great people that have invested in me and mentored me as a leader. I felt like for a long time, I have conversations with people all the time about, how would you handle this situation or whatever? Why not try to stop some of those conversations before they start. Let's give some guidance to folks and help them become stronger and better leaders, because there's a difference between managers and leaders. And so we want to make sure we differentiate that first. But then how do we lead a staff? How do we lead ourselves? Having those conversations and strengthening people's ability to work in those frameworks. And then when they're ready to step up and lead, they'll be able to take up the mantle of these fine folks that have served us for a long time. But a lot of them are older in years. They want to phase out of some of these things. Mm-hmm. We need to give them the pathways to do that. And the best way to do that is to raise up some younger leaders behind them that'll do the same things.
And when you don't do that, you create a gap somewhere.
Yeah.
That suddenly the ball gets dropped and someone needs to pick it up and start a new idea.
Yep.
The rest of the way.
Yeah.
If someone wants to become a member of the chamber, what do they need to do?
You can give us a call at 740-702-2722 or go over to ChillicotheOhio.com. There's a form that you can fill out, and that will send us information, and then we can contact you to have our conversation. One of the things that we like to do is we don't do it in every situation, because there's some people that we can't meet with because of physical presence. Some of them are in Columbus or West Virginia or whatever. But we like to do sit-downs with all of our members to find out what they need, what value they're looking for. And so when you send us that form online, it'll give us the opportunity to set up that meeting.
Yeah, very good.
So.
Good guy, Mike Throne, and, of course, good folks at the Ross-Chillicothe Chamber of Commerce.
Appreciate that.
Helping us to progress into the future. Thank you for watching this special edition of Litter Media Live, brought to you today by our friends at Hometown Motors Incorporated.